And I know you've heard the basic contours of this story, right? Over the last few days, as this crisis has erupted within the Justice Department and more broadly in a country that is now acutely concerned about the rule of law. But there's one very specific piece of this that I'm not sure anybody has reported on yet, which is kind of a beacon in a dark night here in terms of demonstrating what happened and demonstrating what the official lie is going to be as they try to make us swallow this. Today, we spoke with two veteran prosecutors who each spent years in the U.S. Attorney's Office where this has all exploded. The D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office, where the U.S. Attorney herself has been replaced and then fired, replaced by a close aide to the Attorney General himself, where four prosecutors working on the Stone case took themselves off this case, had their names removed from this case. One of those prosecutors, the one who incidentally gave that closing argument in Roger Stone's case, he has resigned from the Justice Department altogether. Today, we talked to two veteran prosecutors who spent years in that specific office, in the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. Between the two sources we spoke to today, collectively, they spent decades in that office. We asked those two veteran prosecutors from the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. if either of them could ever remember prosecutors in that office, ever, asking a sentencing judge for a defendant to be given a sentence that's below the federal sentencing guidelines, without any of these other factors being at play, without the defendant pleading guilty, without the defendant cooperating with prosecutors, without the defendant providing substantial assistance, right? In the case of somebody who pled not guilty, who went to trial, who got convicted, who offered prosecutors no help, has there ever been an instance? Do you recall ever seeing an instance in that U.S. Attorney's Office where prosecutors handled the sentencing phase of that case by asking the judge for a below-guidelines sentence? What just happened to Roger Stone here, have you ever seen that? Do you ever recall seeing that in all your time, your decades between you in that office? Both of those veterans from the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office told us no, they had never, ever seen it. And in fact, under the Justice Department's own new Trump-era guidelines, not only should the prosecutors have asked for a guideline sentence for Roger Stone, they should have asked for the maximum possible penalty within these guidelines. But instead, Attorney General William Barr intervened and said, no, Roger Stone should get far less than the guidelines suggest. Absolutely unprecedented. And then today, that same Attorney General, William Barr, did a gobsmacking interview with ABC News in which he described it as, you know, something that was part of the normal course of events, that the Justice Department should recommend a sentence for Roger Stone that is far less than the sentencing guidelines. He is now making this public case today that it's a totally normal thing for prosecutors to have asked for a below-guideline sentence for him. That's a totally run-of-the-mill, normal course of events kind of thing. It only looks bad because, coincidentally, President Trump made these public statements demanding lenience for his friend. William Barr told ABC News tonight that his intervention, his personal intervention as Attorney General of the United States into Roger Stone's sentencing recommendation was a totally normal, just a, Tuesday morning kind of thing. He definitely would have done it anyway. He does it all the time. It only looks like he's running the Justice Department for the benefit of the president's friends because of some stray, totally coincidental remarks by the president that honestly have made things very awkward for William Barr, who is, after all, just doing his day job.
I had made a decision that I thought was fair and reasonable in this particular case. And once the tweet occurred, the question is, well, now what do I do? And do you go forward with what you think is the right decision, or do you pull back because of the tweet? And that just sort of illustrates how disruptive these tweets can be.
So you're saying you have a problem with the tweets?
Yes. Well, I have a problem with some of the tweets. I'm happy to say that, in fact, the president has never asked me to do anything in a criminal case.
And that's definitely not what any of the tweets are doing, right? The tweets are really their own little characters. I think of them as small, like kind of Smurfette types that do their own. But that apparently is going to be the official line. The Justice Department, that U.S. Attorney's Office particularly, does not ask for below-guideline sentences in cases like this. In living memory, they do not do that. But the Attorney General is going to say that, yeah, it was a totally normal thing for him to have done, to intervene in that case and insist on a below-guideline sentence. It's just a totally Tuesday morning, run-of-the-mill kind of thing. And it only looks weird because, coincidentally and totally separate and apart from his independent decision-making on that, the president called for lenience for that defendant. Here, plainly, among us citizens, let us not abandon our powers of reasoning and common sense. I mean, here, plainly, despite the official lie that was rolled out today to try to alleviate this crisis, here, plainly, the Attorney General intervened personally to do this most unusual, once-in-a-lifetime thing for the president's friend, because that guy was the president's friend. And there is now, broadcast on ABC News, an official lie about that. But the truth is evident here. And that's where we are as a country. And so we are in the midst of this crisis, or what you may prefer to think of as our new reality as a democracy. I mean, the Attorney General today telling ABC News in this interview that the president's tweets, in his words, have made it impossible for him to do his job. Well, Attorney General Bill Barr has been happily intervening in multiple criminal cases on behalf of the president. It's clear that him using the Justice Department as a tool to please the president is something that he views as his job. It is only the president bragging about the fact that that is happening that is the thing that's making it hard for Bill Barr to keep doing it. Because as long as the president keeps braying about the fact that the criminal justice system is now his tool to reward his friends and punish his enemies, well, that lays it all bare. It's causing a little bit of an uproar, causing a lot of criticism. Frankly, it's easier to intervene in the justice system, to make it exist for the purposes and the pleasure of the president, if you're not getting criticized about it. If you can sort of muddy the waters and make people think that it's at least complex and we're not sure what happened there. I mean, it is maybe a glimmer of hope in terms of the rule of law that the backlash to what has happened this week appears to be bothering the Attorney General. It has at least caused him to generate the official lie as an explanation for what has happened here. The fact that he at least felt it necessary to do that, maybe that's good. Maybe that's a good sign. Maybe protest and complaint and principled resignations have at least caused that little prickle of discomfort